welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are stepping right into the unlisted basement of the Archives of Anomalous History. We're joining Chief Archivist Elias Thorne, a man who spent 40 years as the custodian of the world's absolute most baffling events, and he's finally passing his life's work down to his brilliant young successor, Clara. He places this massive, faded, leather-bound ledger right there on the desk. The title? The Enigmas. Thorne tells Clara that, we're taught science has a neat little box for literally everything, but his worldview, it's quite different and honestly a bit chilling. He warns her that the universe is actually a sprawling, chaotic abyss, and occasionally, well, the lid of that neat little box just pops wide open. This ledger contains events that completely, utterly defy physics, logic, and human psychology. These are the kinds of mysteries that keep scientists awake at 3 a.m. So let's open the ledger together and see exactly what happens when the rules of reality just break. Section 1. Traces in the Sky. Anomalies from Above. The very first chapter of Elias's ledger focuses on traces in the sky, and we begin with the sky literally tearing itself apart in 1908. Okay, let's dive into this. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, out in the unbelievably remote Siberian taiga, a column of blinding blue light moved across the sky. And then, the world basically exploded. We are talking about an estimated blast yield of 10 to 30 megatons of TNT. To put that terrifying scale into perspective, that is roughly 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. 1,000 times! The shockwave knocked people off their feet over 40 miles away. It lit up the atmospheric night sky so brightly that people sitting in London could read their newspapers at midnight. No joke. It was an impact event of an unprecedented, absolutely catastrophic scale. But when Russian mineralogist Leonid Kulik finally managed to lead an expedition to the site in 1927, what he expected to find versus what he actually found is just mind-boggling. Kulik naturally expected a massive impact crater. The reality? Absolutely zero physical remnants of a meteor. No crater, no fragments whatsoever. Instead, he found 80 million flattened trees fanned outward across 2,150 square kilometers. And, bizarrely, right at the epicenter, the trees were completely stripped of their bark and branches, just standing perfectly upright like alien telegraph poles. Whether it was an air-bursting comet, or as some of the wilder theories out there suggest, a chunk of antimatter, the projectile itself vanished like a ghost. Let's leap from a massive physical explosion to a cosmic whisper. Fast forward to August 15, 1977. Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope was just scanning the incredibly noisy static of the universe. Suddenly, astronomer Jerry Amen noticed a massive anomaly on his computer printout. For exactly 72 seconds, the telescope captured a continuous, narrow-band radio signal originating from the constellation Sagittarius. It was 30 times louder than the deep space background noise. Amen was so incredibly shocked, he just circled the data sequence in red ink and wrote "wow" right next to it. Now, here's why scientists were absolutely stunned by this. The signal came in at exactly 1420 megahertz. This is known in astronomy as the hydrogen line. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the entire universe, right? Scientists have long theorized that if an intelligent alien civilization actually wanted to communicate, they would broadcast on this exact frequency because it's the cosmic water hole, where natural background noise is at its absolute lowest. It's essentially the galactic equivalent of leaving your porch light on so someone knows you're home. Yet, despite turning our greatest telescopes back to that exact patch of sky for decades, the silence has been deafening. That 72-second signal never repeated. Not once. Section 2. Ghosts of the Journey, Vanishing Without a Trace. Now we turn the page from the mysteries of the sky down to the unforgiving ocean. Let's look at the ghosts of the journey, vessels and flights that vanished without leaving a single trace. And the true story of the Mary Celeste completely tears down a popular maritime legend. We've all heard of the famous ghost ship discovered adrift in the Atlantic back in 1872. The myth always claims searchers found warm food on the table and steaming cups of coffee, but the chilling reality is actually way stranger than the myth. Captain Briggs, his family, and the crew were completely gone, but the ship, it was perfectly seaworthy. It had enough food and water on board to last 6 months. Their cargo of highly flammable alcohol was mostly untouched, and crucially, this is the weirdest part. The crew left their personal pipes behind. A 19th century sailor never willingly abandons his pipe. They clearly left in a panicked hurry in the single lifeboat, taking their navigation gear, but leaving no clue as to what terrified an experienced captain enough to abandon a perfectly sound ship in the open ocean. You might think that in the 21st century, with all our GPS and constant satellite tracking, nothing can truly be lost. Well, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 absolutely proved our arrogance. Tracing this timeline is deeply unsettling. On March 8, 2014, the Boeing 770 said a routine goodnight to air traffic control. Just minutes later, the transponder was manually switched off. The massive jet took a sharp, highly aggressive turn, completely evading civilian radar, and then just flew in complete silence into the desolate, empty expanse of the southern Indian Ocean until it finally ran out of fuel. Despite the most expensive search in all of aviation history, the main wreckage and the 239 souls on board remain totally swallowed by the abyss. It is a terrifying reminder of just how vast our oceans still are. Section 3. Codes and fractured minds. Unbreakable patterns. Let's see how this builds a picture of not just physical mysteries, but deeply psychological ones. Take the Voynich manuscript. It's a 15th century codex filled with these bizarre hand-drawn illustrations of non-existent plants, and it's written in an entirely unknown script. Alan Turing's legendary Enigma code breakers, they failed to read it. Modern AI supercomputers failed. Now you might be wondering, isn't it just a medieval hoax? But linguists discovered something staggering. The text perfectly obeys Zipf's law. This is a highly complex statistical rule governing exactly how frequently words appear in natural human languages. It is incredibly difficult to fake this consciously, especially back in the 1400s. So it proves the manuscript isn't just gibberish. It flows like a real, structured language with actual syntax. It means something. We just literally can't read it. Sometimes, though, the human mind fractures on a mass scale. Case in point, July 1518, in Strasbourg. A woman stepped out into the street and just began to dance, in total silence. Within a month, 400 people had joined her in this nightmare trance. They danced until their feet literally bled and dozens died of sheer exhaustion. The local authorities, disastrously, thought the cure was to build stages and hire musicians to make them dance it out. Modern science usually points to ergotism, a damp rye mold that produces LSD-like compounds, causing extreme hallucinations. But wait, there's a catch. Ergotism also cuts off your blood supply, causing gangrene, which makes dancing for days physically impossible. So what's the alternative theory? Mass psychogenic illness. The people of Strasbourg were under such immense, crushing psychological trauma from famine and disease that their minds collectively snapped into an infectious, hysterical trance. Decades later, a completely different kind of mass disruption hit Chicago. On November 22, 1987, a pirate hijacked two major television broadcasts. First, a brief 21-second blackout hit the WGN News, replaced by this erratic dancing figure wearing a rubber Max Headroom mask. 2 hours later, they struck PBS for 90 incredibly surreal seconds, featuring distorted audio, nonsensical rambling, and the masked phantom being spanked with a fly swatter. I mean, it looks like a silly amateur prank, right? But pulling this off required a massive, high-powered microwave dish aimed directly at the Sears Tower, just to overpower the station's signal. It was a $1 million, highly technical, felony-level crime executed for a surreal joke, and the FBI absolutely never found the culprit. Section 4. The macabre and violent. Horrors in the cold. We definitely have to lower the tone here as Elias's ledger takes us to isolated, freezing locations where science just completely surrenders to pure horror. Consider the sheer terror of what happened at the Hinterkaifeck farm in Bavaria back in 1922. The father, Andreas Gruber, noticed these terrifying breadcrumbs leading up to the event. Unfamiliar house keys showing up, a strange newspaper from Munich that no one bought, and most horrifyingly of all, footsteps in the fresh snow leading directly from the dark forest to his farm with absolutely none leading back. A phantom was living in their attic. This intruder eventually lured the family out to the barn, slaughtered them with a mattock, and murdered the newly arrived maid and the sleeping infant inside the house. And the most chilling detail of this whole thing? The killer stayed on the farm for 4 days. They literally fed the cattle and cooked meals just yards away from the butchered corpses, and they were never caught. Equally horrific, but honestly far more baffling, is the 1959 Dyatlov Pass incident. This is where 9 highly experienced Soviet hikers inexplicably slashed their way out of their own tent from the inside into a -30-degree blizzard. The medical data from their autopsies reveals a totally impossible reality. Yes, some died of hypothermia, which makes sense, but several of them had massive internal blunt force trauma. We're talking shattered skulls and crushed chests. An examining doctor actually compared the sheer physical force to a high-speed car crash, yet the victims had absolutely no external scratches, cuts, or bruises. How do you completely shatter a human chest cavity without even bruising the skin? Throw in the fact that there were trace amounts of radioactivity found on their clothes, and you have a puzzle that entirely defies logic. So what was it? Was it an incredibly rare, mathematically unlikely slab avalanche? A top-secret military weapons test gone wrong? Infrasound-induced panic? We don't know. And neither did the Soviet investigators. They abruptly closed the entire case with a final report stating simply that the hikers died due to an unknown compelling force, which, as Elias Thorne astutely notes, is really just bureaucratic speak for, we have absolutely no idea, and we are terrified. Section 5. Respecting the mystery. The vault stays open. Which brings us right back down to that subterranean archive in London. The rain is still drumming on the glass, the ledger is finally closed, and Clara asks Elias the question we are all likely thinking right now. If we can't actually solve these terrifying, baffling anomalies, why do we constantly obsess over them? What is the actual value of investigating the unknown when our neat little scientific boxes completely and utterly fail us? Elias's answer is profound. He looks at her and says, "A mystery is a mirror. When we look at the unexplained, we are forced to look at ourselves. These impossible events highlight our human hubris and our limitations. They prove that despite all our advanced technology and all our accumulated knowledge, we are still so small and the universe is still so vast and untamed."
Please like and subscribe.